Alrighty, everybody. Welcome to our tonight's call for two different parts of the planet. Today, we are extremely blessed for each and every one of you to meet an extraordinary human being, Dr. Aaryon Kauffman. He's been in Asea for quite some time. His story, I would prefer he says it from his heart and his background. He knows it better than I do. And we're just really, really excited to share some time and have a conversation about what Asea is for you as a doctor and for you as a person. And let her rip. So, Jessica, did you want to say anything?
No, I'm all good there.
Okay.
I'm so happy to have you here, Aaron, and really look forward to our little talk tonight.
I do too. So I'm Dr. Aaryon Kauffman, and I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Actually, I live in the mountains above Albuquerque, New Mexico, Cedar Crest at, I don't know what it translates to in meters, but it's 7,000 feet. And that's over a mile high.
Wow.
And I've practiced integrative family medicine in Albuquerque for 32 years. And what that means is I integrate whatever helps my patients into my care. I do a lot of mainstream medicine, but I also do dietary and nutritional counseling with everybody. I use lots of herbs. I have a dispensary that has over 120 different herbs and homeopathics, glandulars, enzymes, and so forth that I've collected over 30 years and 32 years in practice that, help one thing or another as far as my patients are concerned, that I use a lot. And I treat basically anybody from birth to death. Have a very, very busy practice. And I've been using Asea in my practice for approximately 5 years now. And of all the things that are in my dispensary, there's nothing even remotely like Asea Redox and Renew 28. They're remarkable products that have revolutionized my life, my practice, and the lives of hundreds and thousands of people, that I've had come into contact with. What else?
Well, Aaron, just like 5 years ago, obviously, Asea somehow or another walked into your life. Could you just share how that unfolded for you and what that experience was?
Certainly. It's interesting, Seth. I'll just be very upfront with you. I was very ingratiated about network marketing. In the 80s and the 90s, I had been involved with network marketing and it left a very bad taste in my mouth. And for 15 years, being an integrative family doctor, people are bringing me the latest, greatest juice, antioxidant, and I would say, is this network marketing? And they would say, yes. I said, absolutely not. Never again. And I was serious. I just had it with all the hype and the disinformation and so forth. And I was never going to do that again. Again, I had pretty bad experiences. And a dear friend of mine, Dr. Krista Edmonds, presented this to me, and she said, this is network marketing. I said, no. She spent over a year giving me research articles on, I've been a runner for 40 years, and I run out my back door at 7,000 feet, and I run up through the Cibola National Forest up to 8,000 feet and back. And at that time, I had been running those trails for 16 years. And she knew I was a runner and gave me research articles that showed increases in the ventilatory thresholds of high-performance athletes by 12%. And a ventilatory threshold is the place where a runner or a performing athlete, high-performance athlete, hits the wall. They run out of oxygen and can't push on. And I do that 8 places when I'm running up to 8,000 feet and back. And she gave me articles on mice and the increase in their endurance by 29%, and these are really well done studies. It's good science, double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized studies. And the athletic studies were crossover studies with washouts. All that's by way of saying this was good science that really showed some pretty profound stuff, and some metabolic studies that showed these huge shifts in the precursors and intermediaries to the Krebs cycle, the energy production cycle inside our mitochondria. It was compelling enough that I started drinking it. And within a month, I'm powering up the mountain harder and faster. And within 3 months, right before I turned 60, I set new personal best times for these trails that I've been running 16 years.
Wow.
So that got my attention, and then at 4 months into drinking it, I began sleeping like I hadn't slept in 25 years. And then one thing after another over the next year or so stopped hurting. So this, you know, was pretty compelling. And I talked to Dr. Edmonds and I said, I think I'm going to have to drink this the rest of my life. It's not cheap. And she said, tell 6 people about it and yours gets paid for. And I went, I made the, you know, the sign at her again. But what happened, Sapieska, is I started talking to people, and very, you know, based on our prior conversation, we're going to get into this a little bit. It was not very professional. You know, I came from 15 years of I'm never going to do this again. And all of a sudden, people would be saying things, and I would go, you know, this is exactly what I would do. I would say, you know, I've been drinking this stuff called Asea. And they would look up and to the right, and I would go, no, it's not the acai berry. You know? Yeah. And they would go, oh. And so I was gratified. They'd never heard of it. But here was the interesting thing. Based on my previous experience, and the reason I'm going into this is because of what we talked about before, and we can get into this. My previous experience with network marketing was so much hype and smoke and mirrors and so forth. And I started telling people my story, very short version. I said, this is this redox supplement that has to do with energy production inside the mitochondria. It's identical to what we produce. It was like a little 30-second nutshell. And then I would say, you know, I'm running faster, setting new personal best times. I'm sleeping like I hadn't slept in 25 years. Things stopped hurting. My low back stopped hurting, 10 months in. And instead of my previous experience 15 years earlier, where people are backing up emotionally or physically, people were leaning in. And for those of you who have children, you remember reading stories to your children and their eyes get real big and they're just open. And people were doing that. And I actually had 3 people raise their hand and say, I want that. And this was like a 2 or 3 minute story, very unprofessional. And it was one person after another. It took me a week and a half to get 6 people to get mine paid for. And it just kept going from there. So that's the inception.
That's amazing.
That inflection point.
Inflection point. I actually didn't know that.
That nexus point, or delta point, as Tyler calls it.
Delta point. So wait a second. So that was
5 years ago.
5 years ago. You're 65 now.
No, I'm 64.
64.
65 in 6 months.
So you're still obviously drinking the Asea and using the Renew.
You know, as I get older, it's like if I weren't drinking this, I would be a basket case. I mean, at the level I push myself, I couldn't function.
So,
sure.
So from obviously you've been running for that long, and especially over time, because we tell people we've been using the product for 3 years, and seriously, it just keeps getting better, and we didn't even know we could feel better. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, I actually feel better. There's no end point to feeling better. Is that the same for you, Aaron?
It's interesting you're asking, Seth. You know, yes and no. For the first year, there was just every month or two, there was some quite significant new improvement. I would say that continued to some degree for 2 to 3 years. For the last couple of years, you know, maybe again, it's, you know, my pushing myself so hard and so forth. But I do notice some things here and there. You know, I'll discover something new, but it's sort of a plateau thing at this point. Okay. But that's 5 years down the line.
So how much 5 years down the line, we hear these stories about, 10% production less every 10 years after the age of 10. And by the time we're 50, we've sort of got about 50% of these molecules. How much would you drink on a daily basis, or apply the Renew just for your own general maintenance well-being, or do you beat that when you're going for a big run or something?
Are you sure you want me to tell you?
Yeah, I'm curious.
I don't measure anymore, but I go through approximately 3 cases of Asea Redox a month.
Okay.
And very, very hard on this body. I have had shoulder surgery. I've trashed my other shoulder. I have, from running on rocky trails for all these years, my low back is problematic, my hips. And so twice a day, I put it from here to here on my shoulders, hips, low back, and my lower legs. And I put it here, and it's helping me to go a little bit here. But 3 to 4 days a week, I rub my legs down a half hour before I run, because of the studies that were done by Stevens and Associates that show basically within 15 minutes after you rub the gel on, you have essentially 50% increased blood flow to that area. And indeed, when I'm running up to 8,000 feet, my legs don't turn to lead. And the one day I forgot to do it, they did.
Wow.
So I go through 10 tubes of Renew a month.
Wow, okay.
So that's 1 every 3 days. And, when I wake up at night and my shoulder is hurting, I rub it on. In 5 minutes, it doesn't hurt anymore, and I'm back asleep.
Wow.
That's great.
Thanks for sharing that.
I use a huge amount. I tell people that, when I'm introducing this to them, to say, and I'll say, here's what most people do, here's what I do, just to show them that, there's extremes. And, just using, for instance, a case of the drink and 2 tubes of the Renew is, that's pretty low level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How did you, and at what point did you start to introduce Asea to your patients and in your clinic?
Well, again, the story I was telling you was that story. So it was approximately, I would guess, Jeska, it was probably about 2 to 3 months after I began drinking it. Something like that.
And how do you approach that?
Well, at that point, it was, it's actually an interesting sort of spiritual thing, and I won't go into that too much, but, I was at a nexus point and an inflection point in my life. It was a huge transition when this came in, and it was on the heels of something pretty big. And I would walk into the room at that time, and I would think, this person doesn't want to hear about this. And the next thing I would know, after we'd done the interview and so forth, I would be telling them about it without intending to. And they would be uniformly, when I had decided I was not going to speak to them, and I did, they got excited. Wow. And so I sponsored a great many people early on, in fairly rapid fire order, because that's what I was focused on. These days, it's the same for patients as it is for anybody else. I ask a lot of questions, and I truly listen to the answer. And I do still tune in and listen inside for, the appropriateness for this person. I'm certainly, it's my clear intention to honor and regard who I'm dealing with. And so it's not about, I think, or my business, that sort of thing, as to why I'm sharing this with somebody. It's because, and it's easy to do, as though, I don't know who all is going to be listening to this interview, but these are amazing molecules. I mean, there's literally no living thing that doesn't need these to survive and prosper. So it's an easy thing to consider that it's going to help essentially anything that anyone has going on. But I do want to be mindful of that person's sensibilities. But the generalization is, Jessica, is I interview this person as a patient, as I always do. And then, after I've examined them and so forth, and we're talking about a treatment plan, in that sense, this is the next thing in my armamentarium. This is the next tool in my belt. We don't sell this. We sell the gel at the clinic, but not the drink, for various reasons, and we can get into that if you choose to. But I'll tell them about it and say, I recommend this because here's what this does. And, essentially nobody has ever heard of redox signaling. So I give them a nutshell introduction to it. And most of the time they want to know more, and I will email them a page of links and then follow up with them. And that's the way I do with anybody.
Thank you.
Whether they're friends, family, patients, somebody I've just met, whatever.
So Aaron, from a point of view, like you had 15 years of resistance from whatever happened in the past, especially the hype, the rah-rah, the integrity. What was the turning point for you where you, from a company point of view, to be associated with this and engaging or stepping into being, this is integrative into your business, or this business into your business? What was it that shifted or changed your mindset around this company or this whole feeling where you can go, yeah, I can put my hand on my heart here and I can work with this?
That's a great question. And it points out to why we have such a wonderful relationship. And just for whoever's listening to this, oh my gosh, have you guys scored. Sep and Jessica are just, in my book, they have more heart and soul than anybody I've ever met. They're just delicious people. And what you're asking me, cuts at the heart of that. So it was a progression step. The first thing that got me, because I did have this resistance, was, oh my gosh, this has made this huge difference in my own life. The second thing was I started seeing it make a difference in other people's lives. And again, as I told you, there was this brief motivation to get mine paid for, and after, I don't know, 10 or 20 people had gotten on the product and I started seeing these results, it was like, okay, this is important stuff. And then I had this unique experience, and I look at it as divine orchestration. The third month I was drinking this, I was running back towards my house, and my neighbor was outside, and she had some health issues. Well, I guess I can tell you this. She had a brain injury and had a great deal of difficulty. For 7 years, she had been in pain from head to toe and couldn't walk very far, couldn't turn suddenly, used a cane. Her equilibrium was off. And she was just miserable, couldn't get words out because she had a brainstem injury. And nothing anybody was doing was helping her. She'd seen, I think, over 20, probably 23 doctors. And I was running by the house and she was outside, and I said, why don't you try this? And I saw her, she began, because she had nothing to lose. She was miserable. She would lie in bed 18 hours a day because she was so unstable, but could only sleep about 2. She would just stare at the pain. It hurt her to chew. She figured she had nothing to lose. She started drinking it. I didn't see her for 3 weeks. When I saw her the next time, she did not have her cane. She later told me she was all starting to drop all of her pain meds. And Sep, she was talking coherently. I was in tears. I'd never seen anything like this in my life. I subsequently found out her husband had a brain injury, an anoxic brain injury, 23 years earlier. I didn't know this. He wouldn't speak much. I thought he was just aloof. And 23 years earlier, he was 63 at this time. He was 40 years old. He was a bank vice president in Seattle. And he had at the end of an indoor soccer game, he had a heart attack and dropped dead. And he was down for 9 minutes, which is too long. So he had anoxic brain injury. And for the next 23 years, he watched reruns. And again, I told you we live up at 7,000 feet. So there's, thinner air. And he would be walking the dogs on the hills here. And he would have to stop because he's a heart patient. He starts drinking, and unbeknownst to me, and he's not having to stop on the hills within a month. Within a month of drinking it, he's not having to stop in his walks. I didn't know this part. The wife is doing so well, she gets on a plane to go visit her daughter in Los Angeles and leaves him on his own. And she says to him, "You double your dose on the Asea." 4 days later, still makes my hair stand up. 4 days later, he calls her and says, "The fog is lifted." She goes, "Who is this?" She doesn't recognize his voice. And after 23 years, this guy wakes up. And he's funny, he's sharp as a tack, he teaches me things on the computer. So the whole point of this is, here's this couple, both with brain injuries, that are normal. And 3 months into drinking it, I go, if this happens for one more person in my entire life, I have to tell people about this. It doesn't matter if I get 1 million no's. If it serves one other person at this level, I have to do this. It's a mission. And I'll say this, essentially everybody who uses it now and uses it properly has results, whether they notice them or not, the time frame, they have results. But that level of story, these things you just don't see in mainstream or alternative medicine, I would say I see or hear a new one about every 3 to 6 months. Wow. I mean, just stuff like no way. So that was a huge nexus point for me. And I kept seeing that sort of thing, and it became more of a purpose, making a difference in people's lives. And then there was this interesting phenomenon. The world economy shifted in 2008, and a lot of my, retirement shifted as well. And all of a sudden, I'm telling people about this, and they keep sending me more and more money. And I go, if this keeps up, that's my retirement plan. So that was certainly an important part. But probably as important as anything is then I went to Salt Lake City and met the Asea corporate people. And I started meeting more and more of the field leaders. And I thought, these are the kind of people like Jessica Moss and Seb Hock, who I want to spend the rest of my life hanging out with. And I used to say that to people, and now it's interesting. In the last year, I go, and I am spending the rest of my life with these people. So that was part of that transition.
Wow.
And it is, it is such a delight. What you heard me say, the one thing I remember from the talk that you heard in 2015 is I feel like I hit the jackpot.
Wow. Thanks, Aaron. That's I'm sort of holding back the emotion, and
yeah, my glasses are fogging up.
It is. I think we could sit here all day and share powerful stories, and just out of respect for the people who are really, really excited about the product, and we hear a common thread coming up with a lot of the team. They're really, really scared of the detox effect, and they think. Then all of a sudden, people think that the Asea is the enemy because it's helping people detox. And yet we nurture them through that. But is there something that you could say to help people? Maybe there's a different mindset of what they say. We call it a healing promotion, or and we nurture people through that process. As a doctor, how would you help people understand that some people and either double it, triple it, or ease back, or drink more water? I mean, what's your sort of take on that when that's the scary monster is the detox?
Well, first of all, I would tell people who have that fear, to go to ateamsupport.com and password protected, capital A associate. And I think it's about 5 or 6 of the frequently asked questions above Sapak's great story, which we showed last night at a meeting I did.
Oh, did you?
And, you know, I edify you every time.
Oh, wow.
There's a talk about detoxification by Dr. Foster Malmed, who does an exquisite job of that, if you need the full explanation.
Okay.
My understanding, and I'll refer to Dr. Gary Samuelson. He's a medical atomic physicist who is one of the great thinkers in the world, just a delightful man, just an amazing soul. He's responsible for stabilizing the molecules that allow us to have these products. He said to me one time that the detoxification process happens because cells that are deficient in redox signaling molecules become senescent. And that means that they're basically senile. And if you think about somebody has advanced senility, you know, it's grandpa's sitting there and the room is full of trash and he's oblivious. And all of a sudden we replenish these redox signaling molecules and all of a sudden grandpa wakes up and goes, this place is a mess. We need to clean up. And maybe, you know, as their son or grandson or whatever, you've been saying, we need to clean that up, clean this room up, and he's just been sitting there. Or more extreme, the house is on fire and we need to get out, and they're just sitting there. So when we replenish these redox signaling molecules, the cell wakes up and begins doing what it's supposed to do, which is, you know, detoxifying, cleaning up garbage. You know, it becomes efficient. It becomes euthaned. So not only is it not something to be afraid of, it's certainly to be desired. You know, and that's the way I teach people to think about, you know, replenishing these molecules, is euthaning the cells. Now, based on my experience, I would say it's not even 2, maybe 3% of people that would have any detoxification experience. Wow. And, you know, you can kind of guess that if they've been very sick or they've had a really lousy lifestyle, they eat horrible food, they don't exercise, there's more chance of them detoxifying, you know, having a detox reaction. And to be real clear, it's detox. It's not a toxic reaction. It's not what do you call it? Side effect. It's a detoxification. Right. And it's healing. And I basically will say to people when they tell me, you know, the most common thing is for 2 or 3 days, 1 or 2 days, to have a little low-grade headache, a little fatigue, maybe feeling like they have the flu. You know, a very few times over the years I've seen somebody have a rash for a day or two, rarely longer, but it happens. And just as you said, I tell them to drink more water and keep going if it's very severe, which I have only seen a couple in my 5 years that was severe enough. We told them to ratchet back on their dose and, you know, work up more slowly. But it is not something to be feared. In fact, I tell them that's great. It means it's working. Your cells are waking up.
Oh, that's great. I love the way you put that, because I hadn't heard Gary Samuelson say it, the senile, you know, that I can relate to that, you know, because
it's a perfect analogy. And in fact, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I guess being a doctor and business, if we put the two together, you know, is this ethical to have this into my practice? For those who may be listening who are doctors and they go, well, from a business point of view, how do I build this business? Do I talk to my patients, or am I talking to other people that aren't sick, you know, from a preventative or athletic point, which you've already touched on? But do you talk to people outside of your practice from a business point of view, you know, about this Asea potentiality for them?
Well, I do. I'm like you guys. It's like I think about it. I sleep and breathe and dream about it. It's, there's never been anything like this. So I'm, as the occasion presents itself and it seems appropriate, I talk to people about it. And business-wise, there's never been an opportunity like this. As far as now, let me qualify here for a second, because I just had this flash. It's not like I'm sitting here talking to somebody I meet at the grocery store, a patient or a friend or family, and going, how can I get this person on Asea? I'm living my life. And, this touches on something that we spoke about earlier. It's common when people first get started in network marketing generally, I think, that they think they have to do a script or some sort of presentation, and it becomes very unnatural to them. And, particularly if it's family and friends, they are kind of looking at them like, what happened to you? All of a sudden you're acting weird. This is, if you're going to have a big business, you're going to have to learn to love and listen to people. And, the things that took my business to the early heights it did was just caring about people and listening. And they will tell you what they need. And then you can say something on the order of, well, if I had something that might help, would you want to know about that? And if you've listened to that person sincerely and they feel heard, guess what they're going to say? Well, of course, because you just said, Joe, you just told me you've been having this back pain for 10 years and it's messing with your life. If I had something that would make a difference, would you want to know about it? Of course. Wow. So, yeah, I talk to, whoever it seems appropriate, whoever I'm given to talk to about it, commonly patients. Yeah. And as far as incorporating it into my business, first of all, it's the next thing in my armamentarium. We carry the gel in the clinic because it's small and the results are rapid. And so I tell people, I'm going to sell it to you at retail. We mark it up $12 US. And I tell them that. And I say, if you're going to stay on this, talk to me and we'll get you set up so that you can get it directly from the Asea Corporation. And you can save that $12. The drink we don't carry in the clinic because they need to be on it for 3 to 4 months to give it a fair trial. And it's too much volume. I don't want to do that. I will not sell people 1 or 2 bottles or even a case. Yeah. I tell them, if you're going to use the drink, you need to be on it for 3 to 4 months or don't waste your time. Some people say, well, is this ethical to, you're making a profit on something you're giving to people to help them with their health? And, I really don't understand that. It's like saying to a doctor, how can you charge people for helping them with their health? It's your profession, and it's expected. We have a dispensary, as I voiced to you earlier, and we sell all the things that I recommend to people out of that dispensary. So this is no different from that.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just being mindful of the time, and we really appreciate just a heartfelt, honest and intelligent conversation there. I'm learning so much about you that I didn't even know, even though we've had many conversations. But I guess just in transition to, I guess everyone on the planet, regardless of your religion, culture or family background, we're coming into the holiday festive season, and we wanted to finish up our training with the team about how do we have just a really relaxed conversation with where families are going to be together, and maybe a few people have some drinks and they're relaxed. And, how would you share Asea in that festive season? And do you see that as a space that's appropriate and feels good for you?
Because you're bound to get the question, and what have you been doing for the last 6 months? Right?
Right.
How would you talk?
Or somebody who you don't know who says, what do you do?
Yeah,
that's a good one.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that strikes me is looking at you two is to tell whoever's listening to this that not only have they scored because you guys have such huge heart and soul and you're such intense, wonderful, brilliant, communicators and loving souls, but you're also some of the fastest growing people in all of Asea. You're working all around the world. It's a passion for you. You guys scored. You have, if Jeske and Sepp, your upline, you are in the right place. You could not be in a better place. So that's what strikes me just as you asked me that question. But having said that, I guess what I would say is the same thing as anybody else. Well, two things pop into my head. One is these are people you care about. You need to learn to listen and listen within listening to see what's really going on with that person, to understand them. And to the extent that you listen to people and ask them questions, everybody's favorite subject is themselves. When you truly are listening, it is, absolutely. Yeah. When you're truly listening to what they're saying, not thinking about, oh, here's what I'm going to say in response to that, but you just turn it off and your desire is to know what they are trying to communicate to you. People feel that. It creates a space into which they can open up. And sometimes you'll watch people and all of a sudden they'll start talking really fast because they think they're going to be cut off. Mm. But as you keep listening, and your intention is to understand and hear what they're trying to communicate. And that's your whole purpose. They're going to tell you all kinds of things. And almost nobody has that experience of truly feeling listened to. So all of a sudden, there's this great trainer named Clay Stevens. They're moving toward, who talks about this. Instead of being in a relationship where they're separate from you, they're moving toward you because you're listening to them. And then when you take something that you've found that they've said that's really important to them, not to you, and you say, if I had something that would really help you, Uncle Ned, with your migraine headaches, and this is not right off the bat. This is after you've listened to him go on and on and on for 10 minutes. And not just go on and on and on for 10, 15 minutes, but ask him questions that lead him into telling you more. And then you say, if I had something that would make a difference in your life, would you want to know about it? And he's going to say, of course. So it's, family or otherwise. And family is a tough sell because they judge you as being who you used to be. Mm. But if you can sort of detach from that and just listen and care and respond, and then when you open up and tell them, and you're almost, particularly with people who know you like that, it hits me in the moment, you almost want to be sort of coy. It's like if you all of a sudden are blurting out all this information about redox signaling and you're trying to be the source of the information, people may want to back up. But if you give them a little, 1 minute talk or something and they are asking questions, you go, why don't I send you some links so you can explore this more? That probably works better than you trying to tell them. I guess that's what I'd say. But, that's true of anybody. It's not just family.
Yeah, that's very true.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, thank you. We know that you're a busy man and you're a busy doctor as well. We so appreciate you. We appreciate our friendship together and the stories we've shared. And we know for a fact that this is just the beginning. And we're coming to Ireland. Today we've sealed the deal.
Oh! Congratulations! Oh, that's exciting.
Oh, we're so excited. My
I'm
mum.
so proud of you guys. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Thank you. My mum's family ancestors are from Ireland, so that's why there's a part of me that wants to connect.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aaron, for this. It's been really fantastic to hear what you've had to say, and I know that everybody will really benefit from this.
Well,
And,
good. It's
yeah,
a pleasure.
really look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, you as well. Hang on to these guys' coattails.
Thanks, Aaron.
They're heading for the stars.
Well,
I'm so excited for you guys. That's wonderful.
Thanks, Aaron. We really appreciate it, and have
All
a
right.
wonderful,
Love you guys.
Thank you.